Good kill, good kill. Hey, good kill.
Hey guys, many of you tuned in a few days ago when we did the preview video of the upcoming Viper flight model updates ED was doing. Those updates are now live in the open beta version of DCS, so now we finally have an opportunity to dogfight some real people and see what this updated Viper can do for us. We'll be taking on the F-14 Tomcat for today's dogfight, and remember that the code GROWLING gets you 10% off of all ED modules at checkout. Okay guys, let's get started. So if you guys remember, the last time we did the F-16 video, we had to fight AI because it was a preview build and couldn't really bring in another person into that. So we had to show off with AI, which I think still gave a pretty good idea of, you know, how good the Viper has become now that we have those changes to the flight model. But today we're going to be dogfighting a real person. There's a Tomcat going in the vertical there, and that Tomcat is flown by Diamondback, and we're going to take him 2-circle here. So we talked about one of the major things that has changed in the Viper is the ITR, the instantaneous turn rate. Now this technically could have been a kill, but I didn't want to do a head-on shot. I really want to take the Viper to the limit of getting onto the Bandit 6. I think that will really show what the Viper can do. So we have some pretty extreme changes to, not extreme I guess to be fair, but they've made some minor changes that had an extreme effect with the Viper. And most of those changes were in the ITR. We have better G onset. The Viper accelerates better. And also, you see this guy's trying to force the 1-circle desperately. And we also bleed energy a little bit slower. And what we see is it's extremely difficult for the Tomcat to get me defensive. Now, if you guys remember previous videos, Tomcat to Viper, the Viper was very often defensive. And you can see things have changed. The Tomcat here, from the beginning of the fight, has been in big trouble against the Viper. And here we go, we're going to yank him into the HUD here. Look at that, pitch rate. Oh yeah. Pitch rate, there we go. There we go. One dead Tomcat. The Viper special now, guys. Very good changes. This thing's definitely a monster now. So this feels more like a Viper to me. This thing is dangerous. In a 2-circle, I feel dominant. I don't feel like I bleed my energy or dump it as quickly every time I pull on the stick. So very overall extremely positive changes here to the Viper. Okay, 2-circle again. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed in the last fight, I pulled him into the HUD at 280 knots. Back in the day, at 350 knots, I didn't feel good about pulling a Bandit into the HUD. Because the G onset was just a little slower, the aircraft bled way too much speed, and so if you pulled him into the HUD and he didn't tighten down and you missed, you are almost guaranteed to be very slow on speed and very vulnerable. Here we are going into a vertical fight, and I should absolutely crush this Tomcat in the vertical fight. Yeah, you can see this developing poorly for him. Missed him by millimeters there. Into the vertical, that's fine. We'll go into the vertical again. Sorry, small adjustment to the track IR. And back into the vertical fight. And once again, absolutely crushing the Tomcat here. Look at him, he ditched out of the vertical fight. Alright, we'll go ahead and just build up our energy. That's a new thing they've added as well. We talked about that in the last video. The lock noise. Very, very happy they added that. That's been missing for a long time. And look at this. Remember, we're keeping a 2-circle. It is a nose-to-tail fight. We are not going to fly high aspect or HUD BFM against that F-14. We're not going to allow him to make 1-circle fights and things like that, right? Look at this. A desperation attempt here. Yeah, hit him in the ass there. And we're going to repo real quick here before we get too close. We got to manage that closure. And so we used a little bit of vertical, and then here I'm going to pull him into the HUD. And look at this pitch rate. Oh yeah. Oh my god. Wow. The Viper is a different kind of animal now. One last fight because, like I said, I'm having a lot of fun in the Viper here, as I'm sure you guys can tell. But yeah, one of the biggest changes in a positive direction about this whole Viper updates and upgrades and whatever you want to call it that ED made. The Viper now, like, the results of the fights come out the way you would expect them to a little bit more. When I used to fly the Viper, and those of you who've watched the Viper versus Tomcat fights in the past, we talked about it at the beginning of the video. The Viper was oftentimes extremely defensive against the Tomcat. The Tomcat was whooping Viper ass, and you had to work really hard as a Viper driver to try to trick the Tomcat into losing. That's basically what you had to do. No longer is that the case. No longer does that appear to be the case. I'm having a very easy time defeating the Tomcat here today. So much so that, you know, it feels super simple. Like, you're just taking them to the 2-circle fight and just letting the Viper do the work for you. You know, like, look at this thing. The energy bleed is next to 0. I just pulled him into the HUD there, or I kind of like went to pure pursuit there just to freak him out, and you saw him reverse the turn there. And there we go. Just hit him right there. And at this point, he's just trying to nose counter. He's just trying to flop around and see if he can get me to overshoot. But the pitch rate and the G onset that they've added to the Viper really helps with this as well. The nose authority is much better. Makes it much more difficult to get the Viper to overshoot. Splash. One other Tomcat there. He did a great job. I don't think I could have survived that long against this Viper. Alright guys, so basically I want to show you this little portion of this dogfight here and really highlight some of the performance that, you know, performance differences, I guess, that I see in the Viper. Right here we got Diamondback. We'll fast forward a little bit. So you can see here, right around here, we're diving 22 degrees, 18. And so here he transitions to the raid fight. Now, this is one of the things that you couldn't do back in the day. We've talked about high aspect and low aspect shooting. As the bandit goes across, you come across and you shoot like this. You pull him into the HUD and you shoot. This is high aspect, because if he's flying this way, you know, you're going to shoot across. This is going to be a high aspect shot. Okay, and we talked about how this allows your bandit to tighten down turns, reverse into 1 circles, and there's a bunch of things that he can do if you decide to take high aspect shots. That being said, there's a time and a place for high aspect shots, but most often it's best if you just are patient and you rate until you get to the bandit's control zone in a low aspect position behind his 6, maybe 30 or 40 degrees off his tail, and then you just kill him pretty easily. At that point, there's not a whole lot he can do. Right, so this used to be the only option that you could do with the Viper. It was difficult to do high aspect, assuming that your bandit knew what he was doing, because he could simply tighten down the turn. And as they tightened down the turn, it became very difficult for the Viper to get its nose onto target. It would bleed way too much speed. It didn't have the G onset or the pitch rate to really pull a bandit into the HUD quickly and kill him quickly. If you were to pull him into the HUD and miss, oftentimes that meant that you had little to no energy left. So you were really taking a big risk in a rate fight pulling a bandit to a high aspect shot. But as you can see, this Viper is very different. So you can see, and at this point, like I've pulled pretty much the burner, and I'm just pulling the aircraft to min radius. So I'm bleeding off all my speed, and I'm getting ready to pull them into the HUD here. You'll see 290 indicated airspeed. Let me give you my HUD real quick. Look at this. Okay, so we have 290 indicated, and what you'll see, watch this indicator because this will tell you where my nose is pointed. So right now it's pure, right? Back here would have been lag, and in front will be lead, right? So right now it's pure. And so at this point, I've already pulled the bandit into the HUD, right? You're not going to pull him into the HUD if you don't intend to shoot him, or at least you shouldn't, right? So at 339 knots, I made the decision. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull him into the HUD and I'm going to take a high aspect shot at him. And as I start to pull him into the HUD, you can see very easily the Viper nose comes around. We bleed off airspeed. We exchange our kinetic energy or speed for nose position. And we bring that nose position around and we pull that lead. And this is still pure. And I'm like, okay, 292. Now I remember looking at this and being like, 292 indicated. The old Viper, no way. No way could you try to pull lead with 292 indicated. You wouldn't be able to, and if you try to, you would come short and you would fall out of the sky, especially at this altitude, right? So no way were you trying it with the old Viper. But here, I was like, you know, we're doing tests, right? I want to see what this thing can do. And so I just pull, and I hit him. And this thing, even for that 1 second that I kind of took my foot off the gas or off the G's, you see this little softening up of the G's. So you see 4.6 as I try to pull the lead right here. So you see 3.9, and then you'll see 4.6, and we're down to 298. And then I ease off the G, 4.3, 4.2. Look at this. The airspeed's already back up. The indicator's already going back up. Like, this Viper is like a bat out of hell now, the acceleration on this thing. You know, it's quite interesting, the massive difference that this thing makes. And then look, I can not only pull lead to take this shot very easily, I can pull it again and sustain for a nice fat burst on that F-14. Look at that. And he just eats all that lead. And I can pull all those Gs. It has barely even struggled, dude. There's like 5 Gs on the F-16. Like, it barely was even like stressed when it took that shot. That is amazing. This new Viper is fantastic. ED has done a very nice job, and this is the dangerous Viper that we've all been waiting for. Okay guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.